All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, for the first time in the 3+ years of the Billy Napier era at Florida, his Gators began this college football season ranked in the top 25. But any good fortune that Napier was receiving in Gainesville has quickly gone away as Florida was upset at home this past Saturday, courtesy of South Florida. And instead of the Gators being 2-0 and ranked as they travel to Baton Rouge to take on LSU this Saturday, the Gators are 1-1 and they are searching for some answers. Now, you look back to last year and that vote of confidence that Billy Napier received late in the season, and then he paid Florida's administrative staff or administrators, excuse me, school administrators, for their belief as the Gators won their last 4 games of the season to finish 8-5, and you expected them to have some momentum going into this season. But unfortunately, we're right back to square one with this loss. And I think this loss that the Gators just suffered to South Florida really sums up Napier's time at Florida. He's 1-1 this season. He's 20-20 overall in 40 games in Gainesville. And it's one of those where if you want to put the cherry on the top to this Sunday, if you want to call it that, is that Florida has never finished with a winning record in the SEC under Napier. Matter of fact, Napier's record in the SEC as Gators head coach is just 10-14. I say this because a lot of people already basically have Billy Napier out the door. And this loss to South Florida didn't make things easier. Why? Because you look at Florida's schedule this year, you can make the case that it's not only the toughest in the SEC, but also it's the toughest in the country. You look at it, and basically, I'm not going to sit up here and call USF a cupcake anymore. Why? Because we've seen what South Florida has done so far this season. They beat 2 ranked teams. They beat Boise very convincingly to beat this to start the season, and then going on the road to Gainesville and winning that game. But nonetheless, you look at what's ahead of Florida in their next 4 games alone. This Saturday, they're at LSU. They follow that up with a trip to Miami. They're home for Texas on the 4th of October, and then they're at College Station to take on Texas A&M for the 11th of October. So when it's all said and done, it's for me, if Florida can come out of that, 3 out of 4, you know what? I'll tip my hat to Billy Napier. Anything less at this point, and the folks are just going to be rumbling around this program. I mean, you think back to how it was last season and the way that Florida started. They got blown out by 24 points at home to Miami. They beat Sanford, and then they came back and lost by 2 touchdowns at home to Texas A&M. So I know that Florida has tried to be patient with Billy Napier. I get it. But he might be wearing out his welcome there. I mean, you look at it, and let's just look at this Florida program for a moment, because the natives are getting restless in Gainesville because they have not seen their beloved Gators win the SEC since 2008. So we're talking about almost 2 decades now. All right. Aside from that, Florida's last trip to Atlanta for the SEC championship game came back in 2020. And of course, in the days of Steve Spurrier, in the days of Urban Meyer, it was consistent. It was expected to see Florida in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. And to give you an idea of this, Florida has never gotten to the college football playoff. Okay, whether it was a 4 team or now the expanded 12 team playoff, they haven't gotten there. Okay, and I'm sure that the folks around this program, I'm sure that their fan base, I'm sure that the boosters, the alumni, everybody, they're not enjoying just from the SEC alone watching the likes of Georgia, Alabama, LSU, and Tennessee all have the fun. Now, like I said, Florida has been patient with Billy Napier, who has shown a penchant for recruiting. Recruiting is great, but you still got to coach him up and you still got to win games on Saturday. And all of the recruiting that Napier is doing is not amounting to the wins on Saturday afternoons, when it matters. Now, is Napier simply on borrowed time at Florida? He might be, because it's one of those, again, you look at this, just the next 4 games alone for Florida. And I mean, that is a gruesome schedule. And of course, you have to ask yourself, can Napier do enough to save his job at this point? I mean, I'm not sure, because I just talked about those 4, and I tried to give Florida the benefit of the doubt coming into this season. But right after the Texas A&M game, Florida hosts Mississippi State, a Mississippi State team that just beat Arizona State, who got to the college football playoff last year. They still got Georgia and Jacksonville. They still got to go to Ole Miss. They still get Tennessee at home, and they finish up with Florida State. So I think at this point, anything less than 8-4, I'm not sure if Billy Napier keeps his job. And honestly, I think the folks there at Florida, at least the fans and the boosters and the alumni, I think they're ready for change. I think, again, they tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I think the folks there are simply tired of the seesaw up and down with this program, and they want to get somebody in there who is going to bring stability back. And I'll tell you like this: if Florida doesn't find a way, like I said, to at least win 3 out of their next 4, which is not going to be easy, I can totally see the boosters around this program just putting the cash together to buy out Billy Napier, and maybe he doesn't even finish the season, and start searching for his replacement. For me, if the chips were to fall like that, I anticipate Florida swinging for the fences with their next hire. Why? Because I think the time has come and gone for Florida as far as finding guys who, the school feels like, you know what, he's the next up and coming coach. I think Florida at this point needs an established coach who has arrived and who is going to galvanize his fan base. And on top of that, he's going to put fear in other coaches around the SEC, to the point like, oh snap, Florida's got this guy. For me right now, I think one name that I think a lot of people are going to talk about is naturally Lane Kiffin. I'll say like this: if you're Florida and things don't work out with Billy Napier, just throwing this out there, and Lane Kiffin is your guy, you've got to go out there and make him an offer that he can't refuse in order to leave Oxford for Gainesville. That's just my 2 cents there. With that said, I think if Florida is going to switch off from Napier, and I think if they're going to go out there and find themselves a new head coach, um, they've got to go not only with somebody who's going to galvanize people, but also they've got to find a way to stay out of that guy's way and let him do his thing. And I say this because, all right, Florida wants to get back to the days of Steve Spurrier. Florida wants to get back to the days of Urban Meyer. I totally get it. Uh, it didn't work out with Will Muschamp at Florida, okay? Jim McElwain, in his first 2 years there, got the Gators to the SEC championship game. They lost to Alabama both times before they let him go in 2017. Dan Mullen, okay, a former Urban Meyer assistant coach, won 21 games in his first 2 years at Florida. 2020, the Gators went 8-4. Of course, they got to the SEC championship game. They lost to Alabama. Nonetheless, uh, Dan Mullen had an up and down 2021, and that's when Florida decided to get off of Dan Mullen and go with Billy Napier. I think A, you've got to be patient. B, you know what, you got to stay out of the way and let whoever you bring in do their thing. And like I said before, I think they're going to swing for the fences and try to find their next hire. Just my 2 cents. The Gators have too big of a program to be an afterthought in the SEC for this long. Okay, I'm old enough to remember that a trip to the swamp, regardless if you were, a layup game, a homecoming game, or an SEC opponent, put a lot of fear in opposing teams. We no longer have that in the swamp. And you figure Ben Hill Griffin seats about 80,000 people. You know, the fans are literally right on top of the field, and it can be an electric atmosphere. And Florida wants to get back to that. Their fans want to get back to that. And I'm not saying Napier's on his way out, but I'm saying that, you know what, it ain't looking good for him. That much I will go on record and say. Why hasn't it worked out recently for the Gators and their coaches? I think the guy who understood that program the most was Dan Mullen, and I think Florida pulled the plug on him too quick. In my opinion, he did have a bad year, and I get it because Florida is expecting their coaches to keep them up with the Joneses in the SEC. I totally get it. I totally understand it. But now you look at Dan Mullen, who's at UNLV, and he's already won his first three games there. Albeit Barry Odom did leave him a good program there to start with. But for the Gators, I want to see how they come out and compete against LSU on Saturday, a good LSU team. Florida's going to be a big underdog in that game. Make no mistake about it. But if the losses continue to mount, I don't see a way that Napier survives. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. No matter how hard you work, and how much you love and respect your craft, this, that, and the third, if you're not getting the wins on Saturday, especially to the level that you're expected out of school like Florida in the SEC, you know what? It's only a matter of time before the boosters and the alumni get that buyout together and they say, you know what? We've had enough. It's time to go. So what happens from here? Like I said, I just want to see how this Florida team competes on Saturday first and foremost against LSU. But again, like I said, the next four games. If Florida goes 1-3, 2-2, something like that, I think Napier's done. I mean, he is, like I said before, he is walking that fine line of the razor's edge, and I'm not sure at this point if he's going to do enough to keep his job because you think about it. Every time Billy Napier and Florida lose a game, we're having these conversations. So when it's all said and done, I think the folks there have had enough. Let's just see how it works out for the Gators. And like I said, with that tough schedule, I'm wishing them nothing but the best. But I'm not holding my breath. But folks, that's going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, if you like what you heard and saw in this podcast, you know what to do. Just hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. And like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can check us out at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365, and you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. But until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, and I'm saying thanks once again for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.